All right, everybody, welcome back. Sam's Army episode 2.260. We got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to start out with headlines, where we will discuss FA Cup replays, Champions League slot allotment, and Vitesse naughtiness. Weekly what if. We got a great submission on big versus little in the Premier League. Next up, Premier League itself. We'll talk about the Deduction Dærby drama, FA Cup craziness, and weekend preview featuring, of course, the North London Dærby coming up on Sunday. Around the world, we got a Champions League postmortem and some continental shout-outs, and then finally stoppage time with Ivan Tony's best bets and everybody's favorite segment, Goas. Now, time to welcome in this week's extra beautiful panel of beauties. We'll start up with Tweedle number one and only Mr. Mitchell Goulet, aka Overtime Mitch. Your question, Mitch, this week is it's an exciting announcement that's sort of wrapped in a thinly veiled query. So that is that TST is, of course, happening in June in North Carolina, as everybody knows. And Sneaky Fox, if we can get the logo there. I can't find the camera. There it is. Sneaky Fox is officially back, and we'll be competing. A lot of the same names and faces that everybody will remember from last year, along with some new ones. We've got like Sasha Kleishen, David Akam. There's a bunch of other new guys. Giorgio Chiellini will not actually be playing, but he will be our spirit guide. I think he's either in Italy or injured or something like that. We're in talks with him, but he's going to be our sort of our moral compass, if you will. But here's your question, Mr. Mitchell Goulet. Are you going to be in attendance yourself this year?
I will be, yeah. I'll see everybody there again last year was awesome. I thought that was like a hell of an inaugural tournament to put on, and the fact that they're scaling it up this year and having a men's side and a women's side, $2 million prizes is going to be sick. I'm curious, what capacity are you going to be? Are you going to be kind of the vibes guy slash water boy slash just walking yellow card again?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think you hit all the high notes and the low notes there. I'm a little bit past my expiration date when it comes to really high level soccer at this point. If they do need somebody to come in off the bench, maybe a 2 steps slower and 15 pounds heavier than he used to be, and score a goal, listen, that's my niche. Most likely they won't. In which case I'll be there for vibes, for jokes, for getting in people's heads, opposition, maybe taking people out the night before, having a couple extra drinks.
You could be good as like a rogue partier. Like you could take oppositions out the night before, offer to get them just a couple extra drinks in their system before an 8 a.m. game the next morning.
Slip them a little something. And by something, I mean like 4 tequila shots, that sort of thing. Yeah. Me and Jay Demerit, that's really our vibe at this point. So
Jay's kind of a wild boy, isn't he? I see some of the shit that he posts. He loves a rave. He loves like an EDM concert. Some of the shit that he posts is awesome. I don't know. I hope to be doing that when I'm his age.
Seriously, Jay. First of all, careful there. But Jay's the best. He honestly is one of the greatest dudes you'll ever meet, and also just an absolutely a beast of a human being.
Baller.
Okay. Next up, much loved blast from the past, and a man who really needs no introduction at this point. Although I will say, I think a lot of people can get Tyler Terrence worked up. I think that you hold the crown as the person who can get Tyler just off his rocker in the 5 seconds, this drop of a hat. And this of course is Mr. Rudy Junda, our weird brain of the official weird brain of the podcast. So your question number one, first, congratulations on Denver winning yet another NCAA title.
Yeah, thank you.
Is this the first one since the glorious championship that you led them to a few years ago?
No, actually, it's the second one, which is crazy.
Damn.
They've had 2 since I left, which is nuts. But yeah, shit's regular now, I guess. It's crazy.
Well, here's your real question, though. So, I mentioned you're the weird brain of the operation here. What have you been up to lately? I mean, I know you're just like are you still killing it on Twitch? Can people find you there? Like, what are you up to these days? And does the gimp suit make any appearances?
The gimp hasn't been present in a little while. I think I beat that horse to death, that leather horse. But no, I've taken like a week and a half break from Twitch. because we had like a new idea for something. And basically what I'm going to be doing is going through like the whole history of video games starting in 1972 with Pong. So it'll be every year, and then every year I'll like wear an outfit that like is in that era. Like I'm redecorating my like stream setup. It'll be like living in that year for a stream and then playing a game. So the first one's Pong, and then it just goes every year, and it's 52 years, 52 games. So that's going to be like the new venture.
Wow.
That's actually the first time I've announced it. So breaking news.
Boom. Breaking news on the podcast. We always love that.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. And it sounds like a heavy undertaking as well.
It is and it isn't. I mean, like, you can get like 70s outfits on Amazon for remarkably cheap. I think they price them at 1972 prices, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, some of the games, like the later on you get, the games will be like longer and harder. And like Pong is like, I'll play Pong for like 30 minutes and I'll be like, all right, let's just like watch some like weird commercials from 1972. So every year, well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there'll be some sticky years. We'll see. That's the fun of streaming. You just don't know.
Is there a game in that 52 that you're most excited to play?
I mean, Elden Ring.
Sure.
Elden Ring was like 2022, I think, or 23. I'm really excited to play that, but the problem with that one is that's like 50 hours of gameplay. So I don't know if I'll be able to finish that one. But Halo, like Halo 1, I'm really excited to like go back through that. Some of those like early 2000s games, I'm really stoked to like jump back into, just from like, it's a perfect excuse, because if I did it on my own, I'd feel like I was wasting time and like living in nostalgia. So now I get to be like, oh, I'm creating content, I'm working, but I'm not. I just want to play these games again.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. So everybody look up Rudy. How do you find you? Like, I don't even know how to say it, but how do you
I just actually changed my username. So it's just twitch.tv/Rudolph.
Rudolph, like the reindeer. Is it spelled PH or F?
Well, that's actually my real name.
Oh, well, okay. That makes sense, actually. Rudy.
It's my government name. Yeah. RDOL. I don't ever spell it. RUDOLPH.
Okay. Everybody go
I
look
never
them
have
up.
to spell it out loud. Yeah.
I mean, that's the same thing, you know, with a lot of people. I'll just say that, myself included. All right, so go look up Rudy on the Twitch. It sounds like he's got a lot of cool content coming up. So everybody check him out. And we'll head to headlines. So first up, the FA, the Football Association in England, and the Premier League agreed to scrap FA Cup replays, I believe, starting next year. And that's the decision was made so that, you know, to relieve fixture congestion, the big sort of talking point that's always been out there for the last couple of years. Now, the interesting point here, apart from the decision itself being kind of interesting, also like it just sort of makes sense when you think about it. Oh, they do need to get rid of some games, just finish it the first time rather than do a whole replay. Well, here's the thing. They did it without consulting the EFL at all. EFL being, you know, the championship and all the professional leagues right below it in the pyramid. So the fact they did this without talking to the EFL definitely rubbed the EFL the wrong way. And I think probably a lot of other people as well, because the EFL and these sort of smaller teams, they really sort of count on the extra game day revenue for survival, essentially, right? I mean, these are shoestring operations in a lot of cases, or at least margins are very small. So an FA Cup replay, especially against a big team, is big money, and it really matters in their bottom line. So, you know, we have the two sides of this. The Premier League basically saying we have to get rid of replays. You know, if we got too many fixtures for some teams anyway, and then you got the EFL on the other side being like, bro, we need money, and this is going to hurt us. And the fact you did this without talking to us and making it a bigger sort of a bit part of a bigger package of financial reform is messed up. So, Mitch, which side do you come down on there?
I'll stand by the EFL in that it was a little shady for them not to be consulted for this decision, but ultimately the decision just makes too much sense for the top teams in the top league. I'm sorry, but if your entire operation is dependent upon the question of a replay to get your books back in the black, then like, I don't know, maybe your club is financially in some more stressful positions than it should be. I think this is the right move. There's no reason for these games to be replayed. Just settle it the first time.
All right, Rudy, agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for them, but it's like a classic case of like just big bank take little bank. Like if they in like business, it's like, dude, like yeah, we're doing. I don't want to say doing them a favor because they're playing in the games, but it's just like, dude, you're the EFL. They're gonna make their call. It's shitty for you. You can bitch and moan about it, but that's just business. It's just life. Like you can bitch and moan about it, but like
The rich get richer, and
yeah, it's like
the poor
it's
complain
just one of
about it.
those things where it's like, ah, fuck, that does suck. But there's just they are. I do agree with the fact that there's just too many games, and it at the end of the day, like you have to find a solution for this. And no matter what, if you're one of these EFL teams or lower teams, like you have to get creative no matter what with revenue. It's just always been a thing. So it's not like anything you're not used to. Um, it's just a bummer, but in the end of the day, I think it is the better decision.
Yeah, I totally understand what some of the Premier League teams are saying here. Again, this isn't like all the Premier League teams, right? It's not like Brentford and Bournemouth are kind of like, we
Yeah.
just got too many games here. But it is when you get to the upper crust, obviously some of the cities of the world and Liverpool's, there are, these guys are playing 2 times a week all season, which is tough. It's fucked up that the Premier League didn't consult the EFL about this, and it's a bigger issue that there are clearly some serious financial just issues that the Premier League and the EFL need to come, to grips with and find some sort of middle ground, which essentially means revenue sharing, right? It essentially means trickle down some of the revenues from the big guys. They should have put this as part of a bigger, sort of package of agreements. So it is kind of screwed up in the way Premier League are going about it, but I think at the end of the day, you're right. Big bank takes little bank. Big bank tells little bank to shut the fuck up, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what's end up going to happen here. Okay, so Premier League, sticking with that, now has a 1.1% chance of getting the fifth, that extra Champions League slot after a no good, very bad week in the European competitions, where let's see, West Ham got knocked out of the Europa. City and Arsenal got knocked out of the Champions League. I think Aston Villa was the only English team to make it through, and they're in I believe, the Europa Conference League. So the big beneficiary here is the Bundesliga. So basically Italy has one of the 2 slots locked up, where their 5th place team will get a direct qualifying into the Champions League, which is expanding next year. That's why they're doing this. But Italy is going to get the 1 slot almost for sure, and then Bundesliga I think has like a 90, doing the math here, 98.7% chance of getting the other one. I think what has to happen is Aston Villa has to win both legs, not just move, advance from the semifinals into the final of the Conference League final. They have to win both legs. The Bundesliga I think they have 3 teams left, if I'm not mistaken, and they have to lose all 6 legs, or at least 5 of the 6 or something like that. And if then the Villa goes on to win the Conference League, England will just sort of pip Bundesliga by just a tiny little bit. But at this point, I mean, listen, I think Germany has basically earned that slot. And the way that England has played in the Continental Cups this year has been a bit of an abomination, which we will get to when we get to the Champions League. But for now, we'll just leave it at that. Heads up, Bundesliga is probably going to get that slot. So that means Villa actually is playing for themselves, because they and Spurs and maybe Newcastle are fighting for that 5th spot in the Premier League at this point. Actually, they're fighting for 4th. But if the 5th slot, if they get a Champions League, then they would be sort of awarding themselves a Champions League slot. So at least they got something to play for as a Spurs fan. I like to see that. Yeah, not much else to say. We'll get into the Champions League quick enough. Lastly, on the headlines, Vitesse, a team that people will remember. We had some guys going over there from, I believe, Chelsea on loan. It's a Dutch team. They are sitting on 17 points right now in the Eredivisie, and they were just handed down an 18-point deduction. So Vitesse is sitting at -1 points, and the reason for it is even more interesting. So it's apparently because the league believes that they still have financial ties to Roman Abramovich, the longtime Chelsea owner, which I guess makes sense that, they had those guys going between Chelsea and Vitesse all these years. But the fact that they still may have connections to Roman Abramovich, like obviously rather problematic in the year 2024 of our Lord. I don't know what else to say about this other than they were going to go down anyway. So the fact they got a deduction this year, I think they're like 10 points behind, the next place team in Eredivisie. So it's kind of like a nothing. It's sort of like a slap on the wrist at the end of the day, but it's kind of shocking that they still, allegedly anyway, have ties to Abramovich, which is a blast from the past. We haven't heard much from him lately. I don't know. Any thoughts on that from the peanut gallery?
I think it's great. I think that we need to. It's good to see financial fair play and tampering dealt with in a proper fashion. I love to see when the book gets thrown at teams that deserve it. I think every team that's gotten it has deserved it. The ones that haven't been punished, they clearly have gone through the process properly. This is all good. The system is working properly.
See, this is the point where Tyler Terrence would be losing his shit over Rudy, the City fan, and looking at 115 charges. I love that. See, that's why we keep Rudy around, or at least he allows us to keep him around every now and again.
Well, I read the interesting thing is I read an article about it today, and it said that they found that Abramovich had they said discreetly pumped 100 million into Vitesse. And I was like, how do you discreetly pump $100 million into an Arrivederci deal? Like, that's like so much fucking money. I mean, I never fully understood the Abramovich thing. It's like, I know he's Russian invaded Ukraine, but I always was sort of like, and no one really said anything, but I was like, they can just like be like, fuck off just because he's Russian. Like, I always found that, I never really understood that fully.
I don't either. I do think that there's probably some laws that came into effect when the UK government. I think they put laws into effect after the war sort of became a thing that said you can't have financial ties essentially to certain Russian conglomerates or people or whatever. I assume that's what this is tied to.
I think it's because he's an oligarch. I think that's
exactly. Yeah. So I'll partially talk out of my ass here for a second, but because he's an oligarch, he's gained his money through less than scrupulous methods and has
allegedly
personal ties to Putin and the Russian government right now. And he's not personally like denounced those ties. He kind of plays the middle ground. And in a scenario like this, the middle ground is not acceptable. So that's kind of why he's looked at, and all of his affiliates are looked at with that kind of like negativity. But yeah, I don't know how you, like Rudy said, I don't know how you pump $100 million into a team and have them still be shit and in the relegation zone and now finishing on negative points for the season. Where does that $100 million go?
It doesn't go back to Abramovich, I doubt.
This is a horrible idea, but it would be fun because now that there's Everton got docked, Juventus got docked. I think that there should be like a way where you can like shoot the moon, where you pick one game to gain all your points back, but it has to be against like your strongest remaining opponent. And then if you lose the game, it's like double.
I like that Rudy, I've been on leagues about handing out point deductions in the middle of the season. I think that's bullshit. I think that's you're punishing players for what a past like managerial team has done. And so I'm all in on that the players and the managers should be able to pick one game from their remaining schedule and just say, hey, this one game is worth 35 points and for us to be safe in the league. And if we lose, we'll go down 2 leagues. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be fun. You are right though. It does suck for the players because they're like, I don't know, it's literally like, I had my guy, like what the fuck?
And the fans. I mean, it's terrible for the fans too, right? I mean, they're completely innocent in this whole situation, and they gotta, deal with like
me.
I was gonna try and work City into that somehow. Oh, we shall see. We shall see. All right, let's move on. We got weekly what if. We got a great submission from Matt Wolf this week. He sent me a question on Instagram, which, by the way, everybody's welcome to. I'm always open ears or open-eyed, or my ears are open whatever on submissions for weekly what if, because my brain always, I don't know, I can't always come up with good ones. This is a good one though. Let's say, and I'm twisting his question just a little bit, but let's say a Super Duper League emerges and the Big Seven, we're basically the Big Six plus Newcastle, they decide, you know what, screw it, we're going to just go join the Super Duper League and leave the Premier League. So it's not just like the Super Duper League is replacing Champions League. It's actually replacing sort of all of it. So say that those 7 teams are gone. Would another Big Four, Big Five, Big Six, whatever number you want to go with, would another sort of conglomerate of big swinging dicks emerge, or would it actually usher in sort of like an age of parity at the top of the I don't know, the new Premier League or Championship pyramid? What do you think, Mitch?
So the reason the big 6.5 are the big 6.5 right now is because of perception and money. The only reason that you included Newcastle in that question is because of the funding that they have.
Money.
So if a league like this were to come about and the big 6 plus Newcastle were to go in there, I think 1, people would be pouring investment into that league, but 2, there would be probably smaller and a little more upstarty investment in what is currently the Premier League. And yeah, I think a big 3, 4, and 5 would rise to power again in the Premier League. I don't think it would be like generational dominance. I think there would be parity when it comes to like play on the field, but in terms of fandom and investment, I think it would be pretty directly correlated to like whichever Premier League club got that next investment money, that next injection of hundreds of millions of dollars and made their players good. Because at that point, there's like a vacuum at the top of the league. And if you're a wealthy investor, you see a space where like, hey, if I can put 300 million pounds into this club, I can almost be guaranteed a Premier League title. Yeah, absolutely. I'll pour money into Villa. I'll pour money into Brentford. I'll pour money into Palace and, become a Premier League superpower.
Thoughts there, Rudy? You think that that's what would happen?
Yeah, there would be a little bit more parity, but at the end of the day, like all sports always have dynasties and like teams that remain at the top for at least a while, and especially in soccer because there's no draft, there's no salary cap really. Well, there kind of is, but you know what I mean. And it would sort of just be like the same but different. It would just be like a diet version of what the Premier League was. But it wouldn't. There would still be like 3 or 4 teams that are just considerably better, simply off the weight of their own revenue. Like, I mean, it'd be cool because like Everton would probably do pretty well because they would be out of this like tough period and like they have such a strong fan base. They would probably do pretty good. But yeah, I think it would just be 3 or 4 teams that would still be pretty solid, but there would be a little bit more parity.
I think that for sure, at least for a while, that there'd be just like this period of parity. But I do think that like the natural order of things would eventually sort of reconstitute, and there would be just certain clubs that they have the richest owners, they have the biggest fan bases, and not only the richest owners though, because that's not really all it is. It's also the owners that are willing to pump the money in. If you look at like Abramovich, for example, like he wasn't the richest of the owners, but he was the one that was like, fuck this, I'm just going to spend all my money making Chelsea good. I can lose money, I don't really care. And for reasons perhaps to get back in the good graces of some of the rest of the world. But anyway, it would be interesting to see who those clubs would be that would sort of become if I'm just looking at the biggest, sort of the richest owners, once you get the big 6 or big 7 out of the way: Fulham, Wolves, Villa, Leicester, Southampton, Palace, West Ham, Everton. Those are some of the teams that have the biggest pockets anyway, which doesn't necessarily translate, because if you look at Leicester, they're in Southampton, they're in the Championship right now. So it doesn't always sort of directly correlate with success, but those are the ones that would have the deep pockets. Now, whether they would sort of spend it, who knows? But I do love that question. I do think it would be like, there would be like this age, or not an age, because that sounds too long. It'd be like a period of parity, but then eventually sort of the cream, and by the cream, I do mean like the people who are willing to spend the most or risk the most would kind of rise to the top.
It would also probably lead to a lot more like Borussia Dortmunds of the world, where like there would be guys like elite, like Crystal Palace, like Eze, like Elise, like they would if that happened, they're very good players, but they would be even more highly rated and highly sought after because it's like, oh, look at them, like they're dominating this new Premier League, and then they would just get siphoned off to wherever, and then it would be this constant like production of like a great star. They leave this like diet Premier League and go on to the next big one.
That's a good point because we're talking about this newly reconstituted, whatever you want to call it, championship, English championship in a vacuum, whereas that Super Duper League would be just hoovering up talent from all across the
they'd be like, thanks, appreciate it. It'd be like they would just be farming them.
Yeah, and it would be so quick.
That's one of the many reasons why, and I know we've talked about like a hypothetical Super League before, but that's one of the many reasons why I don't think a Super League like that would be enjoyable. Because if it were to just suck talent from every corner of the globe and it were to market itself as like this Super League with the best teams and the best players in the world, I don't think the product on the field would actually turn out that way. Like, yeah, it would be an extremely high level. But I think one of the beauties of the Premier League is the gap in skill of any domestic league, to be honest, is the gap in skill between the first place team, and the 20th place team. And like, that's what makes great seasons happen. I don't think we would appreciate like a team that's well constructed throughout the course of a season playing in 6 different competitions as much as we do now. And I think it would just be like, it would just be a bunch of talent kind of going to waste in one league, beating each other up for a whole season. I know that's normal Super League criticism, but
I agree. And like the thing is that like there is a Super League. It's the Champions League. And like the only reason they want to have another one is for money. Like money's the only motive on that one. Like you get them, and the thing that makes it cool is that you get 3 or 4 or 5 games a year where it's like this is like 2 juggernauts going at it. And since it happens very rarely, you see like the games of like the first leg of Man City, Real Madrid. Whereas like if they were going head to head 6 times a year, you wouldn't get that same result, and it would kind of dampen the product. Now, the people that want a Super League to happen only care about those games happening more often because of money. But from a fan perspective, I think like the amount you get now is perfect because it's like this is an event. Like you've got to see this, and these teams are going to be going for it. So the Super League thing is so dumb.
I think we're all in agreement on that one. Hopefully they can keep fending it off, but it sounds like they're going to keep coming back with new ideas. So we shall see. Okay, let's move on. Premier League time. And actually, we got to talk about FA Cup first. So the semifinals happened this weekend. The sort of higher profile game was City versus Chelsea. That one ended up kind of being a yarner, to be honest. Let's talk about that first before we get into the ridiculousness that was Coventry City versus Manchester United. So, from your perspective, Rudy, what did you won 1-0. You didn't look great. City hasn't looked great, a lot of the season. And so we haven't really had you around. What are you thinking like about this City team? Does it still feel like, whatever, I know we're not looking great all the time, but we're just still too deep, too good. We're going to win the Premier League anyway.
Yeah, I think the criticism of that, like they haven't looked that good, is kind of harsh because the style that Pep plays now and like the script is kind of out on like how to sort of nullify City, and it means that like we don't get as many goals as we used to, where it's like teams are very good and well drilled about like sitting back and hitting on the counter. But the Chelsea game is sort of an outlier to me because talk about scheduling, like that was fucking crazy that they had to play they had to play extra time against Real Madrid of all people, and then like 72 hours later play a game against Chelsea. Like you could tell that they were super gassed. And they easily could have just swapped the Man United game. That was a big reason for it. And honestly, the way I saw it was that like it was a really good performance given those circumstances. Like I think Chelsea like missed a huge fucking opportunity because that was like the most like one, you're coming off of super emotional loss where you give everything and it comes down to a razor's edge of if they're going to get through, you lose that game, like the emotional letdown of that. And then you had to get up to go play at Wembley against Chelsea, who, even though they've struggled, like they still have some dudes that are just like very fucking good players. And so that's not an easy game. And they're fully, they're good to go, and we're emotionally down and super tired. So Chelsea, I think, missed a humongous chance to win that game. So I'm actually pretty pleased with it. Like in terms of like from a fan perspective and watching it, it obviously wasn't the what you're used to from a City performance, but it was like a gritty win, which is always fun to see them do. Like the only like really gritty wins I've seen from them were the Champions League final against Inter, where that was a pretty scrappy win where they got kind of shelled, which is something we're not used to. And then that one where they just like clearly didn't have legs and they still found a way to do it. So I was actually pretty happy with it from a fan perspective.
That's a fair perspective. Mitch, anything to add?
Yeah, I fatigue and fixture congestion, especially at this point in the season for teams that are still lucky enough to be playing in multiple competitions. Like that's it's a fair point, but that's also what depth is for. That's also what spending hundreds of $1 millions on your bench is for. And Bernardo Silva's quote after the game where he was talking about how, I just played 120 minutes against Madrid and now 90 against Chelsea within 72 hours. Like that's absolutely exhausting, but that's more so on the coach to rotate him and to give him that breath. I don't think that's on like the actual fixture congestion. Good on him for playing that too. Like, and I think he was pivotal in both of those games. But man, I don't know. If I'm City, I am rotating in that game. I think it was the result that everybody expected. And I do agree that Chelsea kind of missed an opportunity to define a season with a win there. They haven't had much to hang their hat on this season, and I thought they had some really good moments throughout the game. They had some chances, but the better team came out on top in that one.
I do agree with you about targeting Bernardo because watching him, I was like, bro, how the fuck is he playing right now? Like, I was like, put someone else in there, and he did the job. But when I was watching him, I was like, dude, this guy needs a nap.
Yeah, I mean, Mateus Nunes is on the bench, ready to come in. He's healthy. He's plays the
That's why
same
you got
position.
him. That's why
Yeah,
you pay him all the
why you
money.
got him. That's why you spend the money on him, and that's why you have bench players. I mean, you'd rather play him against Chelsea than Madrid, so I don't know. That could also be used to highlight just how important Bernardo Silva is to the team. So it's kind of the same.
Yeah, he's an outlier too because he's one of those dudes that can run so much that like if it's any other player, Nunez probably gets in. But Bernardo is one of those weird freaks that can just run so much.
It's tough to take him out too, just like Rodri, just like KDB. It's like you have those guys in the middle there. Speaking of KDB, the only other talking point I had written down was that free kick that, I mean, I don't know how they didn't call that a penalty, but
that was Grealish.
The Grealish handball?
Oh, it was Grealish. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah,
it was Grealish handball. I don't know how they didn't. Don't know.
Yeah, that was fucking crazy. That was crazy. That was a handball. That was straight up a handball.
Right, his hand was way out to the side. It was I don't know well, listen, we got a lot of VAR talk to get to, so let's move on to the other FA Cup semifinal, which Coventry City and Manchester United. So what a game, by the way. So it ended up 3-3 and going to penalties, but Manchester United came out just absolutely cruising. They were up 3-0, hand up. We laugh at all the Manchester United fans who left the stadium, which is pretty hilarious when they tried to rush back in. And the videos of that are actually comical. But hand up, I turned the game off and did some grocery shopping. Then started to see these alerts going off about Coventry City, and I tried to turn the game back on the ESPN watch. What a comeback from Coventry City! 3 goals in the final. I don't know what it was, maybe 30 minutes or something like that. The final one being Haji Wright, testicles of titanium. That guy steps up and slots the penalty home in stoppage time to push them through to extra time, where he then set up a goal in the absolute dying moments of extra time, but then ended up being chalked off for offsides. And if he was offsides, it was by, we're talking millimeters, not even centimeters, millimeters. But it is what it is on offsides. You can say that it's objective, so it is right, but it just stinks because that would have been one of those moments that not just those fans, but probably soccer fans around the world would have sort of enjoyed and lived with for years. But instead, it's completely out the window. Although we remember Haji Wright setting it up, and we'll continue to. But then the penalties, Manchester United survive and advance and move on. Although the final talking point was Anthony, who, after coming in late in that game, doing absolutely dick all game, except for help take the ball out of the net when they gave up 3 goals while he was on the field. After Manchester United won, he ran, to go celebrate and just did this thing. He did like the cupping his ears thing and right in Coventry City's face. And a lot of people got on the internet. But before we get to that, the game itself, Mitch, just an awesome game. Anything stand out other than Taji Wright being the man, and love to see that, and being unfortunate that the little guys didn't go through, and we got a real sort of David and Goliath in the FA Cup final.
Yeah, it's tough. Before we get into any of the extracurriculars, I do want to give Coventry credit, because that last 25 to 30 minutes that they played was outstanding, dude. Their players looked like they were not just playing at the level, but outplaying United. And it was just really exciting to watch. I wasn't watching the game after it went to 3-0. I had it on in the background, but I wasn't actively watching it.
Yeah.
And then I saw that first goal go in. I said, okay, all right, let's tune into this. Watch the second, watch the third, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. The game as a whole is kind of a tough one to look back at, because you really do feel like Coventry deserved that. The VAR and Haji Wright, it depends on who draws those VAR lines, but he's either onside or offside by like a toenail hair. It's really a shame too, because whether you move him forward or backwards an inch, it doesn't really have any impact on the play itself. Like, it feels like a very anti-soccer call to call that goal back for being offside, when in reality, Wan-Bissaka, who's a defender that was keeping him onside, was miles away from him. Haji Wright had just made a very smart and well-timed run, and it just so happened that he was like a toenail offside. Man, it just sucks. Like, I wish there was more common sense to VAR. I'm not going to say abolish VAR, but I just wish there was more common sense implementation of it, because that was a moment that would have been one of the biggest goals in Coventry United history right there. And it was robbed. The entire scene was robbed by just a boring and unromantic VAR call.
Nerds.
Yeah.
They ruined it again.
And then for the Anthony thing, right? I do have an issue with him coming on, not doing anything, and then celebrating in the face of the other team. But I don't have an issue with the fact that he celebrated. If there are other players that do that, it can be perceived as like, oh, he's got that dog mentality in him. He's there. He's win at all costs. I don't give a fuck who my opponent is. We're on to the next round. We're on to the FA Cup final. That's worth celebrating. But the fact that it was Anthony, and the fact that he had just come on and didn't really add any value to that game, I think that's what rubbed people the wrong way, not the fact that he celebrated. So you also saw the pretty stark contrast between like Harry Maguire going over and shaking hands with them and congratulating them on a really good tie, and then Anthony doing that and jogging away. All in all, it felt like a very anti-football, anticlimactic game. Now we have a Manchester Derby in the FA Cup final, which on paper is sick, but I don't think it's going to be an exciting game to watch. Maybe I'm being pessimistic. I don't know.
United have given teams difficulties,
They
Liverpool and City, I think, to a certain extent. But yeah, it just stinks. The FA Cup, the magic of it, the quote unquote magic with the trademark next to it that I always use. It has it. You want that David versus Goliath thing, which to a certain extent, City versus United still kind of is, to be honest. But it's not like City versus Coventry City. That would be something special. I don't know, Rudy, any thoughts on the United game or the final?
My main question was that I think that there should be, like, when they're that close, I think there should be like a tie goes to the runner situation.
Yeah.
Where like it's like, dude, like, how are you gonna make, like, you nailed it, Mitch. Like, it's so close, it doesn't change the play at all. He still buried it. And so like it's rewarding in the wrong direction, I think, when it's that close and they hit and they score the goal, like you're negating the fact that like the defender really did nothing other than being in somewhat, being in position versus like the guy scoring the goal. And like in baseball, it's tie goes to the runner. Like that's just how it is. It's more fun. Everyone likes it better. So I think when they're that close, there should be something like that to get rid of that, and you get more fun. My other question was that like I don't know what like United was doing defensively. It was so fun to watch. Like they had so many like weird like Aaron Bat or like Casemiro. Like I know their defensive midfielders were like the last two guys back, like Dallo and Wan-Bissaka were like 2 miles ahead of the play. Like Harry Maguire was so far up. It was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? But if they lose that game, do you guys think Ten Hag gets canned?
Might. Yeah, I mean, whether it's
I think
right
he's-
now or at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's at the end of the season, but yes.
I think so too. Because yeah, like you can't fire him like right then and there because like only a handful of games left. But I think that would have been the nail in the coffin. Yeah, I do not like Anthony doing that. He is a master of like bad PR. It's one of those things where it's like I do agree, like celebrating is fine. You won the game, celebrating is fine. But if you give like the totality of Anthony's existence, it's just like, bro, like read the fucking room. Like
yeah.
you didn't do anything. Everyone piles on you for not doing anything. You have like this perception of an inflated ego where you're like a fidget spinner, like you don't do anything. Like you cannot be doing that, Selly, in that situation. Like if I'm on his team, I'm like, don't ever fucking do that shit again unless you score a goal or something. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I felt like I like to see. I liked Harry Maguire. Like I commend Harry Maguire for the shit. Like that's a good example. Like he got relentless shit, and he just kept carrying on. He's put in some like pretty darn good performances. Like he was very like positive in the game. Like there was defensive mishaps for sure, but he's out there and he's giving it his all, and he's like respectful, and he kind of just like carries on with his business. Like complete opposite of how I view Anthony.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, it's just like there's something to be said for celebrating in that moment, and it's almost respectful that you're celebrating because you beat a team that you didn't necessarily think you were going to beat and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you didn't celebrate, it'd be kind of weird, but like the way he went about it and the fact it's Anthony doing it in that situation, I think that's where it rubs everybody pretty much the wrong way.
Also, like the Manchester Derby is cool, but like the common denominator is that like City will probably skull fuck either team. But honestly, it'd be way more fun to watch Coventry because they're going to be full of enthusiasm. They're going to be so hyped up. The odds are that City is going to pound them. But I think that like it would be more fun to see those kids like hyped up, like ready to go. Like you never know what's going to happen. Like those games against those low level teams, like you never know what's going to happen. On paper, there's so much more inferior, but they get to play in a final against Man City. Like I could see them getting up way more for that game. Whereas like Man City and Man United right now, like this is not as exciting to me, even though on paper it should be a better game.
Right.
I would have preferred. Yeah. I would have preferred Coventry just because one, they played so good and it's such a cool story. And Man United like stumbled through the blocks and just like couldn't get like barely got through. It's just sort of lame.
And Haji Wright would have been
Haji Wright,
yeah. So we would love to see that.
So we're going to be talking about Haji Wright as a U.S. number 9 here shortly, or
I mean, he looks good. He just keeps scoring goals. If you keep doing that, what else is he supposed to do? We shall see. All right. The other interesting results from the weekend that we got to talk about: Everton beat Forest 2-0 in what we're calling the Deduction Dærby, and the drama of this was just off the charts. So the game itself wasn't, I wouldn't call it particularly well played or exciting, but the fact that these two teams were in 17th place and 16th place, meaning just above the drop zone, obviously the drama is high, intrigue is sort of at a, it's everybody's interest, and both teams are very much into it. The big thing was there were three calls that should have been called penalties, all of them for Forest, and all of them involving Everton's Ashley Young. Just kind of hilarious. The first one being Gio Reyna potentially tripped in the box by Ashley Young. The second one being a cross that Ashley Young's arm was sort of outstretched. It hit him in the box and, easily could have been a pen. And then the third one, Hudson-Odoi was essentially tackled or tripped over by Ashley Young in the box. All three of them went to VAR, as everything does. And the VAR official, Stuart Atwell, decided play on. We're not going to give it. And then, so obviously, Forest fans were feeling kind of aggrieved about that. Well, they weren't the only people who were pretty pissed off because apparently, it went to the upper echelons of management. I assume the owner himself, because he sounds like a kind of an outspoken dude. And the admin for New Nottingham Forest sent a tweet from the official, from their official account, basically calling the integrity of the VAR official, Stuart Atwell, into question, saying that they're going to, they're going to look into their options as far as legal proceedings and like all this stuff. This isn't the first time that somebody's questioned a reffing decision, right? I mean, that happens every goddamn game. We've talked about it several times already on this program. But the big difference was that they tweeted from an official account calling the integrity of the ref into question, essentially kind of saying, he's a Luton fan, which apparently is true. I haven't heard anybody say that's not true. And the reason that maybe he didn't give the penalties to Forest was because he's a fan of 18th place Luton, who is right behind Forest. Just an absolute ridiculous situation. Hell of a claim. Takes some big balls to say that publicly. Rudy, what do you think here?
I mean, I don't know how you can prove that the VAR guy, you can prove that maybe he's a Luton fan, but I don't know how you can prove negligence on those, because the unfortunate thing is that all three of those are pretty borderline. The second one, to me, the handball, is not a penalty. You could probably take your pick on one or three. It's like a coin flip if those are given or not. If you look at all the calls, it's sort of that classic thing where sometimes that's a penalty, sometimes that isn't a penalty.
Now that's interesting. I would have said the first one with Gio Reyna, that's the one I was kind of iffy about. I thought the handball and especially the foul on the third one were definite. Well, I would have given them as penalties. Mitch, which one? How many of them would you have given?
I would have given one of them as a penalty, and that's the final tackle from behind. That was clear as day. The Gio Reyna one I felt I've seen those given, but felt a little soft in the moment, and even on replay, didn't feel like there was much in it. And then the handball I thought was marginal as well. I don't think that was a clear and obvious error, but that third tackle, that's a penalty 8 days a week.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
And so they probably missed one, I would say. But that's every team, every fan base has a missed call. That's just how it goes. It's just so much more heightened because of the stakes of the game. I'm glad you said that it's probably the owner, because I was like, who penned this tweet? Because I know the owner ain't running that account.
Admin isn't going to go. Admin is not going to go off the rails and do that by him or herself. That was coming from the top.
It's kind of pathetic, honestly, because you're bitching and you may have what you're bitching about totally fair. It's a shitty situation. Optics wise, having three of them is bad, but they were all maybe one of them was definitely a penalty, but having three of them, when you add them all together, it makes you feel super cross. But you're not going to prove dick. You're not going to they're not going to flip over, especially when you come at the Premier League and you come at the refs and it's questioning the VAR. You ain't ever getting any sort of admission of wrongdoing on that front. And they called for didn't they call for the transcripts to be released and
they did.
They wanted the audio.
They did.
I mean, unless you catch the guy being nah, dude, I need Lutton. Unless you hear him say that exactly, nothing is gonna happen. And so it's just sort of pathetic and bitchy. Even though what they're complaining about is fair. But to do that from that account, it just looks so lame from Nottingham Forest. It's we're gonna get our lawyers involved and we're gonna throw the book at you. It's what the fuck, dude? Shut the fuck up.
100%. The point of this whole thing that is so sort of makes it the most embarrassing and kind of makes it just a lame. I mean, it was lame to begin with, but just makes it even lamer is the fact that Luton would have wanted that game to end in a draw, right? They probably wanted those teams to split the points, so then they would have a better chance of catching one of them. So the fact that the VAR official was, allegedly a Luton Town fan, you would have thought that if he was really trying to go out of his way to help Luton Town, he would have given maybe one or two of the penalties, because then that would have sort of helped help Forest climb back in the game. And if they had scored two penalties, then hypothetically anyway, it would have been a 2-2 draw, and that would have been the best thing for Luton Town. So the fact that they're just sort of they're grasping at straws and saying, oh, he's a Luton Town fan, like that's just such a total, I don't know, just lame thing to sort of bring up.
And I'm of the belief now where, like, if you do like a count the votes thing, where like, or you throw the flag and you're like, oh, there's collusion, it's like you just gotta either do it January 6th or don't. Like, if you're gonna go that far, I want to see Nottingham Forest pull up at the Premier League office and storm it. Like, if you're gonna go that far, go all the way in or shut the fuck up.
Right, none of this pussyfooting it stuff
Yeah.
with your, getting your lawyers involved on Twitter.
Yeah.
No, we gotta have an armed insurrection, or just shut
Exactly. Exactly.
I love it. All right. I do feel bad for Forest fans. I do think it's a tough look for the club, though, that they took it to that level. We shall see where things go from here. The other game, Luton Town. Speaking of Luton Town, they got their doors blown off by Brentford at home in a game that they absolutely needed if they were going to sort of have a serious shot at survival this year. They lost 5-1. So that basically means that they have a game on May 3rd at home against Everton, which is their season, right? I mean, they have to win that game. That's a 6-pointer against a team that's, a point or two ahead of them right now. Everton's on 30, Luton Town's on 25. So that, they need that and some help from Nottingham Forest. And keep in mind, the reason we call that the Deduction Dærby, was the fact that Everton and Nottingham Forest should be several more points, with Everton a lot more than that ahead of them. So this whole relegation fight already has just sort of a weird feeling for me. If Luton Town, as much as I want them to stay up, just the way they've sort of played, the way they've played much better than everybody expected, how hot their manager is, it still would feel a little weird if they stuck up because of points deductions. But we'll leave it there. It was kind of an abbreviated week. Some of the other games, there really weren't that much interest, or they weren't that interesting. We're going to skip power rankings for the sake of time here. Pick one game from the week and weekend coming up, because we actually have a sort of a partial slate on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we have a full slate of games on Saturday, Sunday. So one game from this week, Mitch, one game that you find most interesting. Actually, you know what? I'll go to Rudy first, because I think I know where you're going. Rudy, which game are you most interested in?
I mean, I'm really interested in the Chelsea Villa game, just because I really like watching those two teams play. I love watching Villa. I think they're very, very well coached and very good, and they're just very fun to watch. And I enjoy watching Chelsea because I don't think they're nearly as bad as their record shows. Like, they have a lot of mistakes, but they're going to be a fucking problem when those guys sort of like grow into themselves. So I enjoy watching them play, but it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. I'm excited to see, obviously, I'm excited to see the Derby. Like, I'm really excited to see Tottenham Arsenal.
Right.
Because I think Arsenal is kind of battered, and Tottenham kind of is just a fun team to watch this year. Ange is a very good coach, and I think there's a really good chance that Tottenham puts a nail in Arsenal's coffin, honestly.
Oh, you're fluffing my boner here. Rudy,
Yeah.
I love to hear that. I mean, listen, the North London Dærby is always great, right? But this year it's got some extra oomph to it, because Arsenal is in a title race.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, they're at the top of the table right now on 74 points and ahead of Liverpool by 8 goals in goal differential. So, there are actually quite a lot of big games. We got Arsenal Chelsea on Tuesday. So the North London Derby is sort of the highest profile, but like Arsenal's got to get by Chelsea before that. You got the Merseyside derby on Wednesday, another big one. Everton obviously is just desperate for points. Liverpool is on the other side of the table in a title race. Then you got Brighton City on Thursday, which should always, that game is always interesting, especially City going to Brighton should be a fun one. West Ham and Liverpool on Saturday, Villa Chelsea on Saturday, as you said, but the highest profile game of the weekend, North London Derby. So, Mitch, as you hear, Rudy suggests that maybe Tottenham have your number
Put a
this
nail
time.
in our coffin, huh?
It got me excited. It got me all a little amped up here.
That's outrageous. This is the same Spurs team that's coming off a 4-0 battering from an average Newcastle side. Come on.
That's bad for you, dude. That's bad for you.
That's right. That's right.
Well, the thing that I'm worried about most is the fatigue that we talked about earlier. It's playing midweek, and then we have Tuesday to Sunday is not horrible. It's not like City, actually, who have to go Thursday to Sunday. That's a hell of a lot of a different schedule. But I don't think we're going to rotate for Chelsea. We're still in a title race. We are still going to put out our best 11, bar maybe one or two players. And then there's no reason to rotate for Spurs either. So I'm worried that late in that game, there's going to be some heavy legs. I think that we have the personnel to rotate and to be able to provide some refreshments in the 60th minute in that Spurs game. But I'm cautious, but I'm not going to lose sleep over this game. This is Arsenal's game to win. Ange plays too open. Unless you guys drastically change up how you play, we're putting 3 past you.
Well, I'll tell you what makes me nervous. What makes me happy is Rudy saying we might put the nail in your coffin, because just hearing those words, whether it actually happens or not, just hearing the words sort of makes me a little randy. What really scares me though is the fact that Pedro Porro and Udogie are. I know Udogie's out. He's out for the season.
Udogie's not playing.
He's done. He's done for the season. He just got injured yesterday.
Bro.
That's huge. So the way we play. Right. I mean, having Porro and Udogie like flying down the wings, we're tough. We are a tough team to play when we have that sort of that back four with our center backs. But without Porro and without Udogie, oh boy.
What are you guys gonna do? Just pack it in? You've seen that we can't.
I don't know. I don't think we can. No, so I don't think we can. I don't think that Big Ange is willing to do that. So we're gonna have fucking Ben Davies flying down the wing. Oh boy!
We don't have Eric Dyer anymore.
Yeah, that doesn't make me. Fill me with.
Shout out to Eric Dyer, dude.
Oh, we're about to get into that. He might have some goal potential this week. Oh, even though I mean, like, he's still Eric Dyer. It's not like he wouldn't single-handedly beat Arsenal in the Champions League. But we are on to around the world. So Champions League it is, and that was a fun 2 weeks. The last day turned out to be the most boring of the 4 days, which is too bad. Just we ended it on a quieter note. But man, those quarterfinals were unbelievable. Not great if you're a Premier League fan. I don't know if people actually root for the Premier League the way that Big Ten roots for Big Ten teams or that sort of thing. I think that's always been kind of a bone of contention for a lot of fans. But I was actually rooting for Arsenal and City to go through because, not City. But
that means you get a Champions League place. That's
exactly.
You're not rooting out of pure altruism.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Okay, all right, good.
I would never root for Arsenal out of some sort of loyalty to the Premier League. Like it's purely so you would be more tired for Premier League games. If you were still playing another competition, and because it'd be great to have a 5th Champions League slot next season.
Right.
But yeah, so City lost those games with Real Madrid were just battles of attrition and talent. It was crazy. That was so much fun to watch. On the other hand, the Bayern Arsenal game was truly it felt like a battle of attrition to a certain extent, not nearly sort of exciting. I don't know, quickly, since we have a City fan, we have an Arsenal fan, just give us a quick synopsis of your level of disappointment. Start with you, Rudy.
I'm not as disappointed as I mean, everyone wants to jump on City. That's totally warranted. But I'm not that disappointed because it was such a good game. Real Madrid are so good. And a lot of people were saying that like City dominated Real Madrid. I don't really see it that way. Like it was just a very clear tactical battle of philosophy. And Real Madrid are good enough where they can let City lean on them. And City's just going to lean on every team in terms of possession and offensive. But like City couldn't really get good chances. And Real Madrid are good enough where they have the mental fortitude where they're not going to get flustered. It was just a really awesome thing to watch, and losing it sucked, but it's one of those things where like at the highest level of these competitions, like it's such a close call. You know what I mean? Like if either of those teams go through, you can't really be upset either way. And I think people are like, I think people are being like super harsh on Arsenal, and like people like even with City are super harsh. Like you can do almost everything right, and at these super high level games, sometimes you just don't win, and it's not exactly like we got to switch this up. We got to do all the stuff differently. Like the only criticism I'll give of City is that I think that I would like to see a lot more crosses into the box, because right now, like our only goals are coming like through the channels off of either Doku or Grealish. Like you're not seeing the wide array of goals, or it's like Rodri coming in late. The crosses into the box where like you reset and go low to high, like Liverpool do so well, where they get people flustered or like a ball is bouncing around in the box, and then Diaz like comes in and just like rifles it home. Like they're not putting balls into the box as much as I'd like, which would bring Holland in because everyone's focusing in on Holland. You put a ball into the box, he's probably not going to get it, but then that ball pops out to whoever, pops out to Bernardo, KDB, someone who's going to hit the ball well. And so I wish we did that more. I understand that they probably aren't doing that because if you cross the ball in too many times, Real Madrid will hit you on the counter, and then, it's over. So that's like my really only complaint. It sucks. But it was just a great game, and Real Madrid played great. I don't think the whole narrative that like City dominated Real Madrid is necessarily true, because Real Madrid clearly welcomed that pressure. It was much more of a chess game than just them like City dominating. Like it's Real Madrid. Like you're not fucking dominating Real Madrid unless it was last season where we battered them. But like it wasn't a domination. It was just a very good game when the tactics made it seem a certain way, in my opinion.
Thierry Henry kind of said it when he said it. I was like, okay, yeah, that just sort of makes sense the way he put it. But he basically said, you don't have to have the ball to be in control, right? And
Yeah,
Real Madrid,
exactly.
Real Madrid they always felt like it's not like City was out of control, right? City was in control with the ball, but at the same time, Real Madrid was in control without the ball, and they knew what they were
Right.
doing. They know how to handle the pressure, and they did what they needed to do to get through. And that's the story of Real Madrid when it comes to the Champions League. Now, Arsenal on Bayern, like that first game was open. It was end to end. It was fun, 2-2. That second game was pretty dire. 1-0 Bayern came out with the winner. Of all the results, I just didn't think it was going to have one goal. And I thought that, if anything, Arsenal, if they had given up a goal, they would sort of say, fuck it, and just throw people forward and then perhaps concede again, if not a third. But the fact it was 1-0, I was kind of disappointed in that. But what were your thoughts, Mitch?
I do think that we threw men forward after that Kimmich goal. I think that was just kind of, that goal in particular was a product of players being on that stage before and knowing exactly what it takes to survive and advance in a Champions League semifinal or quarterfinal, excuse me. That was a tough one. That was a really tough one to stomach, especially like given all the conversation that had been leading up before, during, and after that game within Arsenal circles. There was a whole lot of pessimism, and I choose to kind of stay on the optimistic side of just about every football. I'm never going to be, a certain manager out, or we need to transfer this player out and replace him with this player, especially after like a really reactive loss like that. I think my final thought on the game was like, sometimes you lose to Bayern Munich in the Champions League. So that happens to teams. That's happened to teams better than us. That happens to teams worse than us. And this Mikel Arteta project is not going to result in a Champions League title after 2.5 years. It's a project. It's a long project, and we've made incredible strides. If you told Arsenal fans 3 years ago that we were going to be neck and neck with Bayern Munich in a Champions League quarterfinal in 2024, I think most of us would take that with a huge smile and say, hell yeah.
And
That's
with City and
definitely
Liverpool in the league at the same time.
right. And in a title race at the same time. And have the players that we do and play the style that we do. I think it was a tough one to stomach for a lot of people because of the tremendous momentum that we've had this season, and to feel it all coming to a halt and to hit like a real roadblock in both the league and the Champions League at the same time. Emotionally, that's pretty devastating for a fan base. But as a whole, like, I'm really proud of this team and what they've done in the Champions League. It's it's a hell of an accomplishment. It's a tough result. I thought we played well. I don't like people getting on Saka for taking that free kick quickly towards the end of the game. People were upset that we didn't, set one up and have Odegaard try to hit one over a wall. We haven't scored from a direct free kick since 2019, so I have no idea what people are upset about that. Saka should have beat the first man on that final corner, but tired legs give for tired corner kicks. So all in all, upsetting. Bayern came out best on the day. I don't think they're the better team, but I think they were more experienced in those situations, and that's what helped them get through.
I totally agree with all that, Mitch. Like, I think people are being way too harsh on Arsenal because they haven't been in the Champions League recently. And they're like, I do agree that you need a striker, but like,
yeah.
People were so harsh on them. And I was like, dude, like, it's the Champions League and you're playing against Bayern fucking Munich. Like, it's a tough game. And they're like, oh, this is the worst Bayern team in 10 years. It's like, okay, yeah, like Leverkusen is like on one right now. And they're kind of off this year, but they're still Bayern Munich. Like, they have Joshua Kimmich, they have Goretzka. Like, they're still good teams. And like that goal that Kimmich got, to me, you're correct. Like, that was that one like Champions League goal where he makes this darting run that's almost impossible to defend and just nails it home. But I was like, dude, like, they played good. They made some mistakes, but like, it's a huge stage and it's Bayern Munich. Like, Man City was the favorites to win the Champions League for like 5 years, and they only got one. And it was still a dogfight. So I think people are being way, way too harsh on Arsenal. Like, we lost to Real Madrid in dramatic fashion. We lost to Lille. We lost to Tottenham. Like, it's just really hard to win the Champions League, even when you're the best team. So I think people are being crazy harsh on Arsenal. If anything, it's just a good learning experience, and you lost to a really good team in the same way that Man City lost to Real Madrid. It's like, oh, we lost to Real Madrid.
Yep.
It wasn't like we got beat 7-0.
Nope.
Arsenal, you're in a good spot. You're in a good spot. It'd be a real shame if you just had sort of an emotional hangover for the next week and lost.
Oh, you love that, huh?
Lost to 2 London teams.
You don't have anything else to play for. I don't know where you think our heads are at, but we are in a title race, and we are only in a title race. So our entire focus is going to be to beat the bag out of Chelsea and to dispose of you guys like the garbage you are.
We shall see. Rudy gave us a chance, so I'm hanging my hat on that.
Yeah, that was before I knew that Udogie and Porro are playing. I think you guys are fucked now.
I shouldn't have told you that, just so your optimism would have like fed into me. Oh well. So quickly, the rest of around the world, got to give a couple shout outs to Leverkusen. I mean, the fact they got the Bundesliga not only locked up, but then this weekend they managed to get an absolute last second draw against Dortmund at Dortmund. They're just, I mean, listen, they might do this thing, go all season without a loss, which would be incredible. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the season if they get there, just where they are in the pantheon of seasons. Another shout out to Bologna, team that I don't think that we've talked about on this program once. They're not in Champions League.
They're an exciting team. Xerxes,
they're fantastic, and they just sort of locked down, not permanently, but they're in 4th place now. They beat Roma today at Roma. Roma's in 5th place right now. So they are now in 4th place on 62 points, just 2 points behind Juve in 3rd. I mean, Bologna is having a hell of a season. I feel like in terms of teams that just don't get talked about enough, that they got to be way up there on the list. So shout out to Bologna. In another week or in a different podcast, we could have spent the entire time talking about the Clásico with Barcelona and Real Madrid. I mean, what a game that was. There were phantom goals, there were real goals, there were just incredible plays. Jude Bellingham does what Jude Bellingham always does these days, and he scored, like a last second winner. just an incredible game, and it was cool to feel like the Clasico sort of had that juice a little bit, which some of them in recent years haven't. So that was
Did
cool
you
to
guys
see.
Did you guys see a good angle of that goal? Because I couldn't tell at all.
The phantom goal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I couldn't see it.
not
I
really.
don't think a good angle existed of it, to be honest.
We've talked about this before, but the fact they don't have goal line technology is mind blowing
Crazy.
in La Liga. It's just absolutely mind blowing. But the pics I saw, just sort of triangulating it in my mind. I mean, that looked like a goal. That looked like a goal to me. So I don't know. It stinks for Barcelona, and Real Madrid basically locked up La Liga with that win. We'll leave it at that. Now we'll go to stoppage time. Put a bow on this episode. So quickly, we'll start with Ivan Toney's best bets, obviously, but the Overtrain five-a-side best bets this week. Not great, not bad. It was 3-2 or 3-2, 3 out of 5 this week. Obviously could be worse. I was really hoping that Sunday was going to bring us home strong with TNS and Connah's Quay in Wales, but unfortunately it was only 2-0, so we did not get over the hump on that one. But 3-2, we live to fight another week. So here is the five-a-side over picks or best bets Overtrain picks. We're going to start out on Wednesday. We got AEK hosting Panathinaikos in Greece. This is a really big one. They're 1-2 right now in the Greek Super League, and so that one will be big. Hopefully there'll be a lot of goals in it. Thursday, we're gonna dig deep for this one. Not a lot of options out there. Tijuana and Pachuca in Liga MX Femenil. Oh yes, we're going to the women's Liga MX, where the Xolos and Pachuca, hopefully a lot of goals in that game. They always do in the past, and I'm loving that. Friday, we're going to A-League, my favorite. Brisbane hosting Adelaide United. Saturday, Schalke hosting Dusseldorf in Bundesliga 2. And then Sunday, we're digging deep again. St. Polten and Stripfing in the Austrian second division or second league. So there we go. We dug deep we had Liga MX Femenil, we had the second Bundesliga, we had the second Austrian Bundesliga. We're going all over the place, but that's what we got to do, to make the people rich. Okay, so let's go make some money on that. Mitch, what do you got for us? Your Ivan Toney's best bet of the week.
Folks, I am not giving you any second division Austrian league locks for this week. I apologize. All of mine are going to be in the first divisions of European football. But I got 3 that I really like. So we're going to take City first half money line against Brighton. I think City get out to an early lead. I'd like them -1.5 as well against Brighton. I think there's a lot of goals in that game if you like an over. I like Sassuolo spread against Fiorentina. I also like goals in that game as well, but Sassuolo is a tough team to play. That'll be at home against Fiorentina. I like plus half or plus a goal for them. And then I like both teams to score in Atletico Madrid and Athletic Club Bilbao. I think Atletico Madrid gets scored on more than like a top La Liga team should. And Atletico Bilbao are a good side. So put those all together, you're at plus 630.
Ooh, tasty. I like it. And Sassuolo, they're in a relegation fight, so they'll obviously come out hard against Fiorentina, who really don't have too much to play for, I don't think. And yeah, Atletico, they're not, the 1-0 Atletico win sides of years past. Okay, Rudy, any bet you like, especially?
Yeah, I'm going Premier League because I don't feel confident to wager other people's money on other leagues I don't know enough about. But the one I really like is, and this is probably a lot of recency bias. This is a recency bias pick. Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, I like them a lot against Newcastle. I don't know what happened against West Ham, but Crystal Palace looked like the greatest team that's ever existed against West Ham. That was fucking crazy. To the point where it makes me worry about this pick that there was something wrong with West Ham's tactics because they were just absolutely Swiss cheesing West Ham. It was crazy. Eze looked like prime Messi. It was fucking nuts. But I think the Newcastle just doesn't have that thing. They've been injured a lot. I think that they're just tired and worn down.
No juice this season.
No juice. They just seem like they're like on a dialysis machine. And so I think
they're playing Spurs, in which case they look like fucking Barcelona of 20 fucking 08 or whatever.
And so, and I just think that like that performance from Crystal Palace, like those guys are feeling good. So I like that one a lot. I do like the first half goal. But the one I really think is, I mean, that Holland is gonna score. Like he's
He's got
just
to do
gonna,
it.
he is
Yeah.
gonna score. So whatever the bet is for Holland to score against Brighton, like he's just gonna score a goal soon. He hasn't been scoring as many goals. He is the kind of player where he is going to score a fucking goal. So that and I mean, fuck it, dude, Tottenham.
Yes, yes, Rudy. I love
Yeah,
that. I don't know where your
completely
optimism
biased.
is coming from, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, let's go make some money. But before we call it quits on this week's episode, go is time. So go to Stival week. Can be good, can be bad. You're the you haven't been on in a while, Rudy. So I feel like we give you the honors here to go first.
I'm gonna go with Eric Dyer, man. Like Eric Dyer, he's playing in a Bayern Munich. He's in the Champions League. He played well. Like if I was more of a casual fan and I was just like looking on Flop Mob and I was like, what the fuck is Eric Dyer up to? And he was playing for like Luton, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, oh yeah, he was a good player, but sometimes you just fall between the cracks. And maybe he's playing for like Lille or something, or like Marseille. Like how like random English dudes will end up in like France somewhere, or like on Roma or some bullshit, like where like slow guys thrive.
Chris
I
Smalling. There you go.
Exactly. And so like yeah, just like those random Premier League defenders that just like are still good enough to play pro, but you just like, where the fuck is this guy? And he's on Bayern Munich and he's playing well. It's pretty cool actually. And that's a good team and he played well. So yeah, and
I mean, he's in the Champions League, which Tottenham is not, and which Arsenal now is not. And he
mhm.
admitted after the game that that felt extra special to dump Arsenal out. So he was among my honorable mentions. It's a good shout there. Apologies to the Roma fans. I didn't mean that unintended shot at Smalling and your team. Listen, Roma's still in the Europa League, I think, at this point, so they're legit. Okay, Mitch, what do you got for us?
I got two of them. Both of them are positive. So one of them is going to be Urian Timber, who is making his return from ACL surgery. Played for Arsenal U21s today, and 8 minutes into his game, just turned around and had a right-footed banger of a goal. I think it highlights just the skill gap between like a first team player and a U21 player. But I love that 8 minutes in that he just put one right where the spiders live up there. And I don't want to be too delusional and say that like if we had him healthy all season, this is our title. But man, it's hard not to be delusional with the way he played for us during preseason and this 1 8-minute goal that I've seen now. Like the dude is so good.
Nobody is
He's
higher on Jurian Timber than you. I will say that.
I'm so I got to interview him too. He's an absolute sweetheart of a man. But like he's just so fucking good. He's so sharp. He can go forward. He can defend one-on-one well. He has great spatial awareness. I'm really high on Urian Timber, and to see him back on the field is really good. And then my other Goa, as you kind of alluded to before, but I want to pick out a stat. Bayer Leverkusen, who have the Bundesliga wrapped up. They are competing in Europa right now and are working on I don't want to jinx it, but they're working on a very good season record. They have scored 14 goals in the 90th minute or later this season. 14 goal, a lot of those being either
I was gonna say,
equalizers
yeah,
or winners.
yeah.
That's crazy.
The latest of them coming at in the 97th minute, which was this weekend against Dortmund, including like some huge ones against Karabag in the Europa League, two of them against Bayern, one against West Ham in Europa as well. Like this team never dies. And even especially after the 90th minute, they get some kind of crazy superpowers where they all switch into gear and they get on the same page because that's just an absurd stat. 14 goals coming after the 90th minute is super impressive. And I hope they close out this season. And that's all I'll say on that.
That's a hell of a run.
Yep.
And they deserve some credit there. So there you go. Good one. My goal is this week I had Eric Dyer written down as an honorable mention. I'm also going to throw out Hamza Chowdhury from Leicester, who got 3 goal line clearances in Leicester's 2-1 win over West Brom this weekend, which is absolutely huge for Leicester. So they're still on top of the championship, the hardest league in the world, probably. They're still number one in the championship, 1 point ahead of Leeds, by the way, who we should all be rooting for. So we could have, TJ and Larry back on. And, but, Chowdhury, that was a hell of a performance out there. 3 goal line clearances and a 1-goal win. Not bad. My actual goal this week, though, is to Ashley Young. So he was the guy who had the 3, infractions, that none of which were given by the ref on field or the VAR. And this is in the Nottingham Forest Everton game. So he's plays for Everton. And on Monday morning, the day after the Deduction Dærby, he woke up and tweeted a picture of saying what he's listening to today, and it was Justin Timberlake's "Cry Me a River," and he just had it like yeah, he had it like pressed on repeat. I mean, just like you said, he was like old school, music this morning. Just an absolute, Neil Maupay level troll job by Ashley Young, which is, I mean, that was even Forest fans, I'm sure they're very much butthurt about this, as they should be, probably. But you got to respect it, because the level of trolling that is just, that's top tier. It's petty, and nobody gets injured, nobody's actually hurt from it, but that really gets the juices flowing. So well done to Ashley Young, from a troll to a troll. I respect the move. And anytime you give Neil Maupay level trolling flowers, you're giving some serious credit. So there you go. Well done, Ashley Young. Thank you, Rudy.
Real
You are
quick,
the best.
hold on. That might
Oh,
have
yeah.
to be a segment. If it's Ivan Toney or Sandro Tonali's best bets and it's Neil Maupay's troll of the week, it could turn into a segment. That's all I'm saying.
I think we may have to work on this. In fact, we may not even have to work on it. We may have you just named the segment right there. Because I think that you're right. That has to become something. Of course, it's brought up by the man who looks closest to Neil Maupay.
I want to meet him someday and just like, I've messaged him too. I've like sent him a picture of us side by side and been like, Neil, people say we look alike, dude. I know you're 5'9" and I'm 6'2", but like, let's hang out sometime. Let's hit some free kicks.
But I'm gonna send him an unsolicited DM as well.
Let him know.
Yeah, let's try.
Make sure it's a good picture of me, but let him know.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try and find one that you guys really do look alike. So we'll get on it.
I'm told.
Mitch, you're always the man. Rudy, thank you. We've been Rudyless for rudderless and Rudyless for far too long. Hopefully you come back and just make Tyler just lose his shit at some point.
It was fun.
Before too long. But thank you for coming back on, and everybody else, thank you for listening. We'll be back bigger, better, faster, stronger next week. See you guys then.